Echo Linden stepped into his apartment, the door sliding shut with a familiar hiss. The motion sensors detected his arrival, illuminating the minimalist space with a soft blue glow. Apartment 7C in the Helix Tower was modest but pristine, all clean lines, sparse furnishings, and the panoramic window that had sold him on the place despite its exorbitant rent. Through it, Nova Seattle stretched out like a luminescent sea, its skyscrapers piercing the perpetual mist that had become the city's signature since the climate shifts of 2130. Ambiance Program 3, he muttered. And the apartment responded with gentle atmospheric sound drain against glass, distant thunder. Another day of designing virtual living spaces for the wealthy, while his own life remained carefully contained. Echo rolled his shoulders, easing the tension that came from 12 hours manipulating holographic blueprints. At 34, he had established himself as one of the city's premier architects of virtual environments, beautiful spaces, created but would never inhabit. He moved to the kitchen unit, pressing his palm against the meal dispenser. Standard dinner, Program 4. The machine hummed, preparing his usual Tuesday meal. Echo didn't look up when a soft tone indicated an incoming message. Likely another client requesting revisions, or his mother checking if he was eating properly. Display message, he said absently, removing the steaming plate from the dispenser. The voice that responded wasn't the apartment system's. Been waiting for you. Echo froze, then slowly turned toward his living area. A woman stood by his reading chair, her silhouette backlit by the city lights. She hadn't been there when he entered. He was certain of it. How did you get in here? He demanded, reaching for the security panel. The building has biometric locks. Your locks recognize me, she said simply. Stepping forward into the light, she was striking. With close-cropped dark hair, framing high cheekbones, and eyes so deep violet they seemed almost luminescent. Her clothing was strange-fitted jumpsuit of material that shifted subtly with her movements, catching the light like oil on water. That's impossible, Echo said, though his hand hesitated over the alarm. I don't know you. Not yet. She smiled, a gentle curve of her lips that seemed oddly familiar. But you will. My name is Lyra Voss. Echo stared, uncomprehending. Look, I don't know what you want, but the first apartment you ever designed was for a professor named Jansen. You included a hidden door behind a bookshelf because he told you every home should have one secret. She moved closer, her steps deliberate. You have a scar on your left shoulder from falling off a hoverbike when you were 15. You dream about the Andromeda Galaxy 3 nights a week. Each word hit Echo like a physical force. No one knew these things, especially the dreams. He hadn't told anyone about those. Who are you? He whispered. Lyra touched the edge of his desk, fingers tracing the grain of the synthetic wood with familiar ease. I'm from a parallel timeline. A very close one only, about 8 years ahead of yours. We lived here together until the quantum collapse. You designed a temporal stabilizer, but it was too late. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I found a way back through a dimensional fissure, but the coordinates were slightly off. I was aiming for my Echo, but I found you instead. That's not possible, Echo managed. Quantum theory had advanced enormously in recent years. Lyra's expression softened. You always say that at first. She walked to the window, her profile etched against the cityscape. The Nova Seattle Quantum Research Center will announce a breakthrough in timeline theory next Thursday. You'll see then, she turned to him, and something in her eyes, a depth of emotion he couldn't comprehend, made his chest tighten. I know this is overwhelming, she said quietly, but I had nowhere else to go. Her fingers brushed the wall panel near the window, pressing a sequence Echo had never used. A hidden compartment slid open, empty. You haven't built it yet, she murmured, more to herself than to him. Built what? Echo asked, curiosity temporarily overriding his alarm. Lyra closed the compartment with a sigh. The quantum anchor, the thing that will keep me here. She faced him fully, her violet eyes intense. I'm sorry to arrive like this, but time isn't linear when you're crossing dimensions. I had to find you before the fissure closed. Echo should have called security, should have demanded she leave. Instead, he found himself asking, why me? Why this timeline? Her smile returned, tinged with something like grief. Because in every reality where we exist, Echo Linden and Lyra Voss find each other. It's a constant. She glanced around the apartment, taking in the space with a look of nostalgic affection. And here, in this place, we were happy. Before everything changed. Echo barely slept that night, alternating between watching Lyra from the doorway of his guest room and researching quantum theory until his eyes burned. She slept peacefully on the spare bed, her breathing even, as if materializing in someone else's timeline was a routine occurrence. Morning arrived with pale light, filtering through the automated blinds. Echo found Lyra in his kitchen, operating his coffee machine with practiced ease. "You take it black with a single ice cube to cool it faster," she said, sliding a mug toward him. "You hate waiting for coffee to cool, but you also hate burning your tongue." Echo accepted the mug cautiously. "That's correct, I know." Lyra leaned against the counter, her violet eyes studying him. "Your skepticism is understandable. I arrived with no warning, no proof except knowledge I shouldn't have, which could be explained by extensive research or hacking," Echo pointed out. Though even as he said it, he knew some of the details she'd shared were impossible to discover. Lyra nodded. "Fair enough. What would convince you?" Echo considered this. "Predict something. Something specific that's going to happen soon. The quantum announcement I mentioned will come from Dr. Alara Kwan, though they're trying to keep her name confidential until the press conference. Your friend Jin will call you tomorrow about a commission for a virtual beach house. He'll be wearing a ridiculous vintage hat when he calls. And tonight at 9:17 p.m., there will be a power fluctuation in the building just for 3 seconds. Echo raised an eyebrow. "That's very precise." "Temporal displacement gives you a unique perspective on causality," Lyra said with a small smile. "The power fluctuation is actually how we first met in my timeline. You knocked on my door to ask if my power had gone out too." "I live alone in this building," Echo said. "There is no your door. In my timeline, I moved into 7D6 months before we met. Here, ... Maybe someone else lives there. Maybe it's empty." Throughout the day, Echo tried to work from home, designing a virtual mountain retreat for a client while Lyra explored his apartment. He watched from the corner of his eye as she moved through the space with eerie familiarity, running her fingers along surfaces, pausing at certain spots as if remembering moments that hadn't happened yet. "This shelf," she said at one point, touching an empty wall space. "You'll install it next month. We'll put your architectural awards and my quantum physics journals on it." "You're a physicist?" Echo asked, curiosity getting the better of him. Lyra nodded. "Specialized in dimensional theory. That's how I managed to traverse the quantum corridor." Her expression turned distant. "The irony is that my research was what eventually led to the collapse. I was trying to fix what I'd broken when—" She trailed off, her fingers absently tracing patterns on her arm. "When what?" Echo prompted. "When I lost you," she said simply. "My Echo he were trying to stabilize the quantum fluctuations. The anchor prototype worked, but the feedback loop—" She shook her head. "I'm sorry. It's still fresh for me, even though it happened, will happen years from now, in a timeline that may never exist here." That evening, Echo ordered dinner from his favorite noodle place downtown. When the delivery arrived, Lyra reached for the bag before he could and distributed the containers on the table. "Extra chili oil for you," she said, passing him a small container. "Water chestnuts on the side because you like the crunch but hate how they get soggy in the broth." Echo stared at her. "I never specified that in the order. You wouldn't need to. Lou's Noodle House knows your preferences. You've been ordering the same thing every Thursday for 4 years." She broke apart her chopsticks with practiced ease. "In my timeline anyway, it's at precisely 9:17 p.m. The lights flickered and died. 3 seconds of darkness, then they hummed back to life." Echo looked at Lyra, who met his gaze steadily across the table. "Coincidence," he said weakly. "Is it?" She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal object roughly the size of a coin. It glowed faintly with an internal blue light. "This is a quantum signature reader. It's detecting the resonance pattern that connects our timelines." She held it toward him. Here, look at the reading. Against his better judgment, Echo took the device. The display showed two waveforms, one solid, one dotted, oscillating in near-perfect synchronization. The solid line is this timeline's quantum signature. The dotted one is mine, the future I came from. Her voice softened. They're harmonizing, Echo. That's why I was drawn to this specific point in this specific timeline. Out of infinite possibilities, this reality is the closest match to mine. Echo studied the device, his architect's mind appreciating its elegant design. If what you're saying is true, what happens next? You just stay here? Lyra's expression clouded. It's not that simple. I'm experiencing temporal displacement sickness already. Small symptoms, headaches, moments where I feel transparent. Without an anchor, I'll fade back into the quantum corridor within weeks. And if that happens, best case, I drift until I find another compatible timeline. She met his eyes. Worst case, quantum dissolution. I cease to exist in any timeline. Echo felt a strange tightening in his chest at the thought. Despite his lingering skepticism, something about Lyra felt inexplicably right in his space. In his life, the anchor you mentioned, he said slowly. Could we build it here? For the first time since she'd arrived, Lyra's composed facade cracked, revealing a flash of desperate hope. You believe me? I'm not sure what I believe yet, Echo admitted. But if there's even a chance you're telling the truth, he gestured to the evidence mounting around them. I'm an architect. I build things. Maybe I can help build this too. Lyra's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. There might be a way, but Echo, her expression grew serious. Helping me means becoming entangled in whatever quantum disturbance brought me here. Are you prepared for how that might change your life? Echo looked around his perfectly ordered, perfectly empty apartment. For years, he'd designed spaces for others to live their lives in while barely living in his own. Maybe, he said, surprising himself with his answer. It's already changing for the better. Echo woke to the sound of glass shattering. He bolted from his bed and rushed to the kitchen to find Lyra on her knees, surrounded by broken ceramic. Her hands were trembling, and more alarmingly, they were semi-transparent. He could see the floor tiles through her fingertips. Lyra. He knelt beside her, hesitating before touching her shoulder, relieved to find it solid. What's happening? Timeline sickness? She gasped, her voice distorted like a poorly tuned radio. It's accelerating faster than I anticipated. She clenched her fists, and slowly, her hands regained their opacity. The quantum corridor is trying to pull me back. Echo helped her to the couch, noticing how she leaned heavily against him, as if fighting some invisible current. What can I do? The anchor, Lyra's breathing, steadied as the episode passed. We need to build it sooner than I thought. Do you have access to a fabrication lab? I use Helix Tower's lab for my architectural models, Echo confirmed. But quantum technology is restricted. The components? I know someone who can help, Lyra interrupted. Dr. Varon at the university. In my timeline, he was my doctoral advisor before joining the Quantum Research Center. Echo ran a hand through his sleep-mussed hair. And you think he'll just hand over restricted quantum tech to a stranger? Lyra's lips curved into a small smile. No, but he might to the architect commissioned to design the center's new virtual conference space. Echo stared at her. I haven't been commissioned for that. Not yet, Lyra said. Jin's call today? It's not about a beach house. It's about recommending you for the center project, as predicted. Jin called that morning wearing an absurd holographic top hat that shifted between galaxy patterns with news of the Quantum Research Center opportunity. By afternoon, Echo found himself in the sleek offices of the center, presenting his portfolio to the project director. Your conceptual understanding of dimensional space is exactly what we're looking for. Mr. Linden, the director said, examining Echo's designs, our research requires visualization tools that conventional architects struggle to conceptualize. I've always been interested in the intersection of physical and theoretical space, Echo replied, the words flowing naturally despite being only half true until yesterday. Excellent. I'd like you to meet one of our lead researchers who will be consulting on the project. The director gestured toward a door. Dr. Varen, join us, please. The man who entered was tall and angular, with intelligent eyes behind old-fashioned glass spectacles. His gaze sharpened with interest as Echo introduced himself. An architect who understands quantum theory? Refreshing, Dr. Varen said, studying Echo intently. I look forward to seeing how you translate our concepts into navigable space. Later, as Echo was gathering his materials, Dr. Varen approached him privately. Interesting timing, Mr. Linden. Your name wasn't on our consultant list yesterday. Echo maintained his composure. Professional networks move quickly, Doctor. Indeed. Varen leaned closer. Almost as quickly as quantum particles during fluctuation events like the one we detected last night, centered around the Helix Tower. Echo's pulse quickened. I wouldn't know about that, no? Varen slid a small device across the table identical to the quantum signature reader Lyra had shown him. Then you wouldn't recognize this either, Echo hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. That evening, Dr. Varen arrived at Echo's apartment. His eyes widened when Lyra opened the door. Fascinating, he murmured, circling her like a scientist examining a rare specimen. Temporal displacement without molecular degradation. How are you stabilizing your quantum signature? I'm not, Lyra said grimly. Not successfully, anyway. She extended her arm, which flickered transparent for a moment. I have maybe 2 weeks before complete dissolution. Varen's scientific detachment gave way to concern. You're experiencing accelerated timeline rejection? Show me what you're working with. Over the next few hours, Echo watched the 2 quantum physicists one current. One from a future that might never exist. Here work together with intense focus. They converted his dining table into a makeshift laboratory. Sketching equations and arguing theoretical models that Echo could barely follow, the anchor needs a sympathetic quantum signature to lock onto, Varen explained, noticing Echo's confusion. Something from this timeline that resonates with her home frequency. Like a tuning fork, Echo suggested. Lyra looked up, her expression brightening. Exactly like that. We need to tune this reality to accept my quantum signature as native, not foreign. And what serves as this tuning fork? Echo asked. Lyra and Varen exchanged glances. You do, Lyra said softly. In my timeline, your quantum signature and mine became entangled. That's why I was pulled to this specific version of you when I entered the corridor. We're connected somehow? Echo asked, trying to process the implications. More than connected, Varen said, studying his readings. According to these patterns, your quantum counterparts, extraordinarily rare, look between them with renewed interest. Were you romantically involved in your timeline? Lyra's cheeks flushed slightly. We were partners. In every sense? Echo felt a strange warmth spread through him at her words. Despite having known her only 2 days, he felt drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain, as if his atoms recognized hers before his conscious mind could catch up. The anchor will need to be calibrated to both your signatures, Varen continued, mercifully changing the subject. It creates a stable field that convinces the quantum corridor that Lyra belongs in this timeline. And the components? Echo asked. Varen sighed. That's the difficult part. I can provide basic materials from the lab, but the core element to quantum resonator is highly regulated. The center has only 3, all constantly monitored. What about the announcement next Thursday? Echo suggested. Dr. Kwan's breakthrough. Would that help? Varen's eyebrows shot up. How do you know about that? It's classified, Lyra smiled faintly. Let's just say we have reliable intelligence. As Varen gathered his notes to leave, he paused at the door. Ms. Voss, the timeline sickness will get worse before we solve this. The episodes will increase in frequency and duration. Its expression grew solemn. And Mr. Linden, you should be prepared. Helping her anchor here will change your timeline irrevocably. The future she came from may never exist, but your future will certainly not be what it would have been. After he left, Echo found Lyra standing by the window, her silhouette haloed by the city lights. He joined her, noticing how the Nova Seattle skyline reflected in her unusual violet eyes. "You knew him well in your timeline?" Echo asked Varen. "Yes. He was like a father to me after my parents died." She turned to face him. "Echo, he's right about the risks. By helping me, you're altering your destined path." "Maybe this is my destined path," Echo replied, surprising himself with the certainty he felt. "Besides, I design spaces for others to live in. Maybe it's time I reshape my own." Lyra's expression softened. Her hand rose to his face, hesitating just shy of touching his cheek. "In my timeline, it took months before you trusted me enough to say something like that." "Well," Echo said, closing the distance between them to capture her hand in his, "maybe this version of me learns faster." Her fingers intertwined with his felt strangely familiar, like returning to a home he hadn't realized he'd lost. As Lyra's form briefly flickered again, Echo tightened his grip. As if through will alone, he could keep her anchored to his reality. 3 days had passed since Dr. Varen's visit, and Lyra's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Echo found her that morning in the bathroom, gripping the sink as half her body phased in and out of visibility. "It's getting worse," she admitted when the episode passed. "The quantum corridor is pulling harder." Echo had rearranged his entire workweek to focus on the Anchor project. His apartment now resembled a mad scientist's laboratory. With components and tools scattered across every surface, Dr. Varen supplied what he could, smuggling basic quantum measurement devices from the research center. But the crucial resonator remained elusive. "Dr. Kwan's announcement is still 4 days away," Echo said. Studying the blueprint they'd created for the Anchor, "I'm not sure you have that long." Lyra sat beside him, her shoulder occasionally brushing his as they worked. These small touches had become more frequent between them, a hand lingering on an arm, fingers brushing while passing tools, standing closer than necessary. Neither acknowledged it directly, but Echo felt the unspoken tension growing. "There might be another way," Lyra said, pulling up schematics on her tablet. "In my timeline, before we had access to resonators, we created a prototype using modified atmospheric stabilizers. The weather control nodes." Echo frowned. "Those are even more restricted than quantum tech." But Lyra's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. "The Nova Seattle Arts Center. Your virtual environment there includes a simulated weather system, doesn't it?" Echo nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "The rain sequence for the Memorial Garden exhibit. I designed the environmental controls myself." He pulled up his credentials on the main screen. "I still have admin access." They worked through the night, Echo modifying his atmospheric simulation code while Lyra adapted it for quantum applications. By morning, they had a viable alternative design, theoretically sound but untested. "It won't be as stable as a true resonator," Lyra warned, "but it might buy us enough time until we can access one." As they prepared to leave for the art center, Lyra suddenly doubled over, crying out in pain. Her entire form flickered violently, becoming nearly transparent before stabilizing again. "Lyra." Echo caught her as she collapsed. Her body felt light in his arms, almost insubstantial. "I'm okay," she gasped, though her ashen face told a different story. "Just fading faster than I thought." Echo helped her to the couch, his heart hammering with fear he hadn't anticipated feeling for someone who'd entered his life only days ago. "Maybe you should rest while I go to the art center alone." "No," Lyra insisted, struggling to her feet. "The prototype requires both our quantum signatures to calibrate properly. We go together." The Nova Seattle Art Center was one of Echo's proudest achievements, a swirling structure of glass and light, housing various virtual exhibits. They made their way to the Memorial Garden, a serene space Echo had designed to honor victims of the climate catastrophe. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered as they entered the simulated garden. Virtual cherry blossoms drifted on invisible currents, and gentle rain fell in programmed patterns, never quite touching visitors, but creating a peaceful ambience. "You never showed me this in my timeline?" "I didn't?" Echo asked, surprised. Lyra shook her head. "You said some creations were too personal to share?" This must have been one of them. Echo accessed the maintenance panel hidden within a virtual stone lantern. "The weather system's core is down this service corridor." They slipped through the staff entrance to the control room, where the massive environmental processor hummed quietly. Echo connected his tablet to the main console while Lyra unpacked the modified components they'd brought. "If we bypass the primary regulators," Lyra explained, "working quickly, we can redirect the atmospheric modulation signals through our adapter." Echo watched her work, struck by the fluid confidence of her movements. "You've done this before?" "With you," she said without looking up. "In my timeline, we modified a similar system to create our first stable quantum field." Her hands stilled momentarily. "It was also the first time you kissed me." Echo felt heat rise to his face. "What was I like? In your timeline?" Lyra's expression softened with memory. "Brilliant. Reserved with others, but never with me. You had this habit of redesigning our apartment every few months, because you said spaces should evolve with the people who inhabit them." She smiled. "You were passionate about creating environments that changed how people felt, not just where they lived, and us." Echo asked quietly. "Were we happy?" "Yes," Lyra said simply, "until the collapse started. Even then, we faced it together." She returned to her work, connecting the final components. "That's why losing you was ... She didn't finish, but she didn't need to." Echo could see the grief etched in the tense line of her shoulders, the careful way she guarded certain memories. "Initializing sequence," Lyra announced, activating the device. The adapted weather processor hummed, its pitch rising as energy redirected through their modification. Blue light emanated from the core, enveloping them in a gentle glow. Quantum signatures aligning, Echo read from the display. "It's working." Lyra's form stabilized completely, the transparency that had plagued her vanishing. She laughed, examining her solid hands. "The anchor's creating a localized field. It's temporary, but a security alarm blared suddenly, red lights flashing throughout the control room. "Unauthorized system modification detected," an automated voice announced. "Security protocols engaged." "We need to go," Echo urged, disconnecting his tablet. "The field should hold for a few hours. Enough time to get back to the apartment and recalibrate our prototype there." They raced through the service corridor, the alarm still blaring behind them. As they emerged into the main exhibit hall, Echo spotted security drones deploying from ceiling panels. "This way," he said, pulling Lyra toward an emergency exit. "My credentials should override the Echo Linden." Familiar voice stopped them in their tracks. Dr. Varen stood by the exit, accompanied by a woman in a research center uniform. "I was hoping it wasn't you when the center detected the quantum fluctuation." Dr. Varen, Echo started. "We can explain. I'm sure you can." The woman beside Varen interrupted. "I'm Dr. Alara Kwan, and you." She turned to Lyra with keen interest. "Must be the temporal anomaly we've been tracking since the corridor breach." Lyra stepped forward protectively. "We're not here to interfere with your research. We just need a quantum resonator," Dr. Kwan finished. "Yes, Dr. Varen informed me of your situation." She studied Lyra with clinical fascination. "A human quantum traveler from a parallel timeline. You understand why the center would be interested." Echo moved closer to Lyra. "She's not a research subject." "No," Dr. Kwan agreed, unexpectedly. "She's a colleague. Her temporal displacement theory forms the basis of our breakthrough announcement next week." She gestured toward the exit. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion at the center." With appropriate quantum stabilization equipment at the research center, Lyra was immediately taken to a medical bay equipped with a quantum field generator. Echo paced anxiously outside until Dr. Kwan emerged. "She's stabilized for now," the physicist assured him. "The field is stronger than your improvised solution, but it's still temporary. Her atomic structure continues to register as foreign to our timeline. Can you help her?" Echo asked directly. Dr. Kwan's expression turned thoughtful. "What you need is a permanent quantum anchor, not just a field generator, but a device that can permanently alter her quantum signature to match our timeline's frequency." She paused. "Coincidentally, that's exactly what our announcement pertains to. The world's first quantum resonator, capable of permanent timeline manipulation. Then you'll help us use it." Echo pressed. "It's not that simple," Dr. Varen interjected. "The resonator is still experimental. Using it on a human subject would be unprecedented, and potentially revolutionary, Dr. Kwan added with scientific excitement that Echo found slightly disturbing. We'd need to run tests, collect data. She doesn't have time for that, Echo interrupted. She's experiencing accelerated timeline rejection. Dr. Kwan and Dr. Varen exchanged glances. We could expedite the process, Dr. Kwan conceded, but there would be conditions. The center would require full documentation of the procedure, exclusive rights to any resulting data, and Ms. Voss would need to contribute her knowledge of future quantum developments. That's for Lyra to decide, Echo said firmly. When he was finally allowed to see her, Lyra was sitting up in a chamber, surrounded by humming quantum field generators. She looked more solid than she had in days, her violet eyes bright against her dark hair. They want to study me, she said before Echo could speak. Use my future knowledge to advance their research. Echo sat beside her bed. You don't have to agree to anything you don't want. We can find another way. Lyra shook her head. There is no other way, Echo. Not in time. She reached for his hand. Besides, in my timeline, I worked with the center. Many of the developments they're pursuing now were my life's work before the collapse. What if helping them accelerates the collapse in this timeline too? Echo asked. What if preventing it here is why I was drawn to this specific reality? Lyra countered. Maybe this is my chance to correct my mistakes. Echo studied their intertwined fingers, marveling at how natural it felt. Dr. Kwan says the procedure is experimental. There are risks. The day of Dr. Kwan's announcement arrived with an atmosphere of tense anticipation. The research center's main auditorium was filled with scientists, government officials, and media representatives, all unaware that the scheduled demonstration had been modified for a purpose beyond scientific advancement. Backstage, Echo helped Lyra prepare for what lay ahead. Her condition had stabilized under the center's quantum field, but occasional flickers of transparency still rippled through her forma, reminder that their time was running out. The resonator will be activated during the demonstration, Dr. Kwan explained, adjusting settings on a tablet. When I announce the breakthrough, that's when you'll step onto the platform. The quantum field will envelop you, and the resonator will attempt to rewrite your atomic signature to match this timeline's frequency. And if it fails, Echo asked the question that had haunted him for days. Dr. Kwan's expression remained clinically neutral. Then the quantum corridor will reclaim her. She'll be pulled back into the space between timelines. Lyra squeezed Echo's hand reassuringly. It won't fail. Over the past days, they had grown closer than Echo would have thought possible in such a short time. Each night, Lyra had shared more stories of their life together in her timeline, their first vacation to the terraformed islands of New Bali. The night they had stayed up, arguing over the ethical implications of quantum manipulation, the small traditions they had created in their shared life. With each story, Echo felt himself falling deeper for this woman who knew him so intimately, not just the person he was, but the person he could become. They had spent hours in his apartment, reconfiguring the prototype anchor into a device that would work in conjunction with the center's resonator. Their hands brushing as they worked, stolen kisses during breaks, conversations that flowed as naturally as breathing. Yet beneath the growing connection lay an unspoken question. Was he falling for Lyra herself? Or for the idea of a destiny already written? Was their bond genuine, or merely the echo of a relationship from another timeline? It's time, Dr. Varen announced, breaking into Echo's thoughts. They're ready to begin. From the side of the stage, Echo watched as Dr. Kwan stepped up to the podium. Camera drones hovered throughout the auditorium, broadcasting the historic announcement worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kwan began, her voice commanding the packed room. Today marks a turning point in our understanding of quantum reality. For centuries, we have theorized about parallel timelines, alternate realities existing alongside our own. Today, we move beyond theory into demonstration. The crowd murmured as a cylindrical device rose from the center of the stage at the quantum resonator, its core pulsing with blue-white energy. This device can identify, isolate, and manipulate quantum signatures across timeline boundaries, Dr. Kwan continued. The implications for physics, for our understanding of reality itself, are profound. Echo felt a sudden pressure against his hand. Looking down, he saw Lyra's fingers turning transparent again, phasing through his grasp. "It's pulling stronger now," she whispered, her voice strained. "The corridor knows what we're attempting." On stage, Dr. Kwan had reached the crucial moment. "Today we will demonstrate the resonator's capability to synchronize quantum frequencies across timeline barriers. For this historic demonstration, I'd like to introduce a special guest visitor whose very existence challenges our understanding of quantum reality." That was their cue. Echo supported Lyra as they moved toward the stage, her form flickering more violently with each step. "Dr. Lyra Voss," Dr. Kwan announced, "quantum physicist and temporal traveler." The audience erupted in confused murmurs as Lyra stepped onto the stage, her body visibly fluctuating between solid and transparent states. Gasps echoed through the auditorium as the reality of what they were witnessing sank in. "Dr. Voss comes to us from a parallel timeline," Dr. Kwan explained, maintaining remarkable composure. "Her presence here is temporary, unless we can permanently align her quantum signature with our reality. Today, you will witness the first successful human quantum anchoring in history." Lyra positioned herself beside the resonator, where a circle had been marked on the floor. Echo moved to join her, but Dr. Varen held him back. "The field is calibrated for her signature only," he warned. "If you enter during activation, it could destabilize the entire process." Echo watched helplessly as Lyra stood alone in the center of the stage, the resonator humming louder beside her. Her eyes found his across the distance, filled with both fear and determination. "Initiating quantum anchoring sequence," Dr. Kwan announced, activating the resonator. The device's blue glow intensified, energy coalescing around Lyra in a swirling vortex of light. Her body jerked as if pulled by invisible forces, her outline blurring. The audience watched in stunned silence as the woman on stage seemed to battle against reality itself. "Quantum signatures misaligned," a computerized voice announced. "Rejection imminent." "It's not working," Dr. Varen muttered, checking the readings on his tablet. "Her timeline signature is too different. The resonator can't force synchronization." Echo felt cold dread wash over him. "What happens now?" "The corridor reclaims her," Dr. Varen said grimly. "She returns to the space between timelines, or dissolves entirely." On stage, Lyra had fallen to her knees, the quantum field rippling violently around her. Through the swirling energy, her eyes found echoes filled with resignation and regret. "No," Echo whispered, then louder, "No." Breaking free from Dr. Varen's restraining hand, Echo ran onto the stage, ignoring the shouts behind him. The moment he crossed into the quantum field, pain lanced through every cell in his body, like being torn apart at an atomic level. "Echo, don't," Lyra cried, reaching toward him as he staggered toward her. "The field will tear you apart." "Not without you," Echo gasped, fighting through the pain to reach her side. He activated the modified device they had built together, connecting it to the resonator's main console. "Our prototype hits calibrated to both our signatures." Understanding dawned in Lyra's eyes. She placed her hands on the prototype, adding her quantum knowledge to Echo's architectural precision. Together, they rewired the field parameters, changing a forced alignment into a mutual synchronization. "What are they doing?" Dr. Kwan demanded from the edge of the field. "Something unprecedented," Dr. Varen replied, watching the readings with growing amazement. "They're not forcing her signature to match our timeline. They're creating a new harmonic frequency altogether." Inside the quantum field, Echo pulled Lyra close, their foreheads touching as reality buckled around them. "If we can't make you match this timeline," he gasped through the pain, "then we make a new path, one that includes both of us." "A quantum bridge," Lyra whispered, understanding. "Not anchoring me to your reality or returning me to mine, but creating a third possibility," Echo finished. "One where both our signatures belong." The resonator's hum changed pitch, the blue light shifting to violet, the same shade as Lyra's eyes. The pain intensified momentarily, then abruptly ceased as the field stabilized around them. "Quantum signatures harmonizing," the computer announced. "New frequency pattern established." The energy field collapsed inward, concentrating into a brilliant point of light between Echo and Lyra before dissipating entirely. They remained kneeling on the stage, solid and present. As the audience erupted in applause and confusion, Dr. Kwan rushed forward, her scientific objectivity momentarily forgotten in excitement. Impossible. You've created a localized timeline convergence, a completely new quantum frequency that exists nowhere else in the multiverse. Lyra stood shakily, supported by Echo. Not nowhere, she corrected. Here now. With us. Later, after medical examinations confirmed both were stable though altered at a quantum level, and Lyra stood on the observation deck of the research center, watching Nova Seattle sparkle in the evening light. Dr. Kwan says we've essentially created our own micro-timeline, Lyra explained, leaning against the railing. A quantum bubble where both our signatures are native. As long as we stay within proximity of each other, the field will remain stable. So we're stuck with each other, Echo said with mock seriousness. Forever. Lyra smiled, the expression lighting her unusual violet eyes that now matched the faint aura visible. Around both of them, when seen under quantum imaging, there are worse fates. What about the collapse? Echo asked. The future you came here to prevent. Already changing, Lyra said confidently. By altering the fundamental approach to quantum resonance technology, we've set this timeline on a different path. The specific conditions that led to the collapse in my reality won't occur here. Echo turned to face her fully. And us? What path are we on now? An unwritten one, Lyra replied. Neither my past nor your future as it would have been. Something new. She reached up to touch his face. Does that frighten you? Not knowing what comes next? Echo thought about the ordered, predictable life he had lived before Lyra appeared, designing spaces for others while his own remained empty. He thought about the stories she had told of their life together in another timeline, a foundation of possibilities rather than a script to follow. No, he said, drawing her closer. It feels like freedom. As they kissed, the quantum field grew,